Welcome back to the exchange, and look at Bitcoin. It's up 4% today, nearing 105,000, which is pretty close to its all-time high. The president-elect has gone from skeptic of cryptocurrencies to more of a believer, and is now reportedly planning an executive order to name crypto a national imperative or priority. Shares of Coinbase and Robinhood are up as well, of course, in sympathy. And my next guest says this rally will continue, with Bitcoin hitting $200,000 this year. Joining me now is Geoff Kendrick. He's global head of digital asset research at Standard Chartered. And Geoff, I was going to say, and you're not even a Bitcoin strategist, but I guess in some way you are. Welcome.
Well, thanks, Kelly. It's a pleasure.
So just walk me through a little bit of the history of how you've analyzed the price of something like Bitcoin and what gets you today to a call of 200K by year end.
2024 was all about the ETF inflows, and quite frankly, they were the best launch of any ETF in the history of the ETF market. And before 2024 and also through this year, I think it's reasonable to compare the ETF inflows to what happened with gold when you had the first gold ETF in the US, which was 2004. In that case, it took about 7 years for that market to mature. Last year, we saw pretty much half of the maturation that I've been expecting to come through in the Bitcoin ETF space. And so I expect that to continue this year. When gold went through that 7-year period, 2004 to 2011, prices multiplied by about 4 times. So that gets you to around about that $200,000 mark by the end of 2025, considering where we started at the start of last year.
All right.
And interestingly, on the ETF side, although we've had about $36 billion of inflows already to Bitcoin ETFs in a net sense, almost none of that is very long-term, long-only money. At the end of September, only 1% was that very long-term pension fund space. So that really hasn't even started yet, and that's where I'm expecting the cash to come from in 2025.
And that's a good kind of grasp of what could drive prices considerably higher from here after the rally we've already seen. I guess the flip side would be, and you have said, look, if it breaks 90,000 to the downside, watch out.
I mean, it is extremely volatile, right? So Bitcoin and digital assets right now, the total market cap of the whole sector is only $3.8 trillion. So that's roughly the same as Apple, right? So it's very, very small. So think about the tech industry in the late 90s, very small, very volatile. Mm-hmm. And what you need to see now, once Trump takes office on Monday, is for the administration to do some of what the market is hoping for, right? So this week we've come up to 105,000 today on the hope that after Monday we get some regulatory changes. We already know we're getting changes at the SEC, and perhaps we even get some money coming out of the government to build up, strategic reserves, a la what we've seen in other asset classes like gold, for example.
Right, because I'm trying to think what at this point would propel Bitcoin higher based on what's already priced in terms of the rumors. I mean, when we've gotten to the point they practically expect a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And my thinking it would be, okay, maybe if we start seeing institutions add Bitcoin to their balance sheet, but even that has kind of been whispered about, right? So, it's that idea that if we don't get a bunch of new exciting announcements, what happens then?
Of course, and we see similar things in other asset classes as well, right? So I would say by Monday we'll be getting close to that all-time high of 108,000. I suspect then President Trump will suggest something in his speech. So I'd expect the asset class to be mentioned on Monday during the inauguration in some form. That'd be seen as a positive. And then after that, we need to see some announcements. And that's when the risk comes in for me, because clearly there are a lot of other things that the new administration will be focused on, not just what I would like to see in the digital asset space.
Are you going to be at the crypto ball? Snoop's going to be there.
Well, exactly. Unfortunately, not tonight for myself, but it sounds like there's a pretty good list going to that in Washington.
It's funny to me as well, because it's not as if this is part of the official inauguration or anything. They're just throwing a party a few blocks. Do they think he's going to stop by, or is it just like, hey, look, we did it? And look at Bitcoin today. We're practically back to an all-time high. It's all good. It cracks me up.
Well, I mean, look, the industry has been waiting a long time to have an administration that looks to be supportive, right? So the last 4 years have been very tricky. The SEC has been much less constructive than the asset class probably had been hoping for. So the fact that we now have an administration that, at worst, is going to be neutral probably means more TradFi involvement, means more of that long-term money getting involved, and really a legitimization of the industry. So no great surprise that there's some parties going on this evening in Washington on the back of that.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Appreciate it today. Geoff Kendrick joining us from Standard Chartered.